So it's been a while since we dug into our big yellow beast here. I apologize for that, but we had like a month's worth of rain. It just never stopped raining. And since this is my garage, it's a little bit difficult to work. But I have not forgotten it. It has been sitting here tarped up, waiting. And it's time to dig into the electrical. Wiring. Well, these are all the wires that came out of both cabs that we have. So the first thing I need to do is kind of lay this out, separate everything out. We've got two harnesses that I salvaged from the existing truck, and the harnesses seem to be in pretty good shape. The one inside the cab a little bit more so, obviously because it was protected from the weather, but I believe that they're good enough to use. I'm fishing wires up for the dome light and cargo light. Those holes are connected if you go up over the support in the back. So I've got my fish through, and I'm just gonna pull this through and then we'll have some wires. I'm switching the blue wire here. That'll be power to the cargo light. And that's just, you don't need a special plug, you just need two spade connectors. And I had to pull that cargo light switch apart, which basically involves just snapping off the 4 molded plastic connectors, popping it apart, cleaning the inside, and then putting it back together. It's just a couple copper contacts and a spring-loaded contact on the switch that moves back and forth. It was just a little bit corroded and need cleaned, so I did that. Tested with meter, it does work. So these 3 wires are going to go up under the floor mat. So we will be ready for the dome light when that happens. And now back here we've got our 2 for the cargo light. So we went into the cargo light install earlier when we were buttoning up the cab, so don't worry about that. But that's how we ran the wires. All right, we need a dome light, and that'll finish up all the electrical up here. Dome light. Well, where can we get a dome light? Alas, poor donor truck, I knew thee well. Well, no one's buying this, so I see no reason to keep a dome light in it. Well, and a snippety snip here. Donor light. Clean it up a little bit. It's still plastic, but I don't care. It's better than nothing, and I can't afford to buy one at the moment. So I guess we can mount that light up there. A lot of those wires are from the cargo light are going to get shoved back in. All right, that's not perfect and brand new, but it'll do the job. So for the door switches, which I bought brand new, there's no wiring for door switches in our harness, so we're gonna have to provide for that. But I made up a pigtail. These are the dual switches that I picked. Why? Well, because I think both my other trucks are that way, and I'm gonna copy them. So I'm gonna put this harness in, this pigtail in, and I'm gonna snip it when I have it fed through and feed it into whatever I need to feed it into. I haven't looked at the wiring diagram yet, but it's not that hard. Anyway, I'm gonna worm these through and get that installed on both sides. Alright, that's one in. Make sure to feed them through the upper hole. There's no reason to feed them through this hole because I'll just get in the way. So, make sure our door closes. The first time you press the door, it should seat the switch properly. Apparently these seat by making a little dent in your door. Okay. We will do that on t'other side. This one's much easier because I'm right-handed. So we just gotta hook these harnesses up to our light harness when we reach that point. Well, we laid out the main wiring harness and got everything in position. I set up the cargo and dome lights to run under the floor mat here. We've got all our plugs here. I wired in the courtesy lights and dome lights. The radio, somebody had cut the radio. I think yellow is battery power for the radio. I don't know. Somebody had cut it, but I'm not sure what radio plug we're going to be using yet. That orange one there, that loose one, is for the cigarette lighter. That section of wire over there is the section that goes through the engine compartment that was for the computer in the 85 truck for the carburetor. And basically right now, those wires are just running through and dead-ending out here until I know what additional wires I need to run through the firewall. That'll be a great way to do that and have them look relatively factory. Now, as far as testing goes, once we have power and we have the front hooked up, I can check the light harness and everything, but we don't have that harness in yet either, so testing will occur later. Engine compartment wiring. So on a truck this old, 50% of it is lights, and this is a diesel, so probably more than 50% of it is lights. It has very little electrical. Basically, we just got to hook up the alternator and the lights and some other gauges and things like that. This alternator has a separate, an external voltage regulator. So this is the harness that goes to the voltage regulator, which is of course worn and broken. I believe I can get a new one of these. I'll probably have to get a new voltage regulator. So I've been checking wiring diagrams and tracing out this bulkhead connector, and it's not what I expected. This original 1975 truck that the wiring harness is from must have been a very, very bare bones truck. There's no options in this at all. No gauges. I can't even trace down a fuel wire exactly. I mean, there has to be a wire for the fuel gauge somewhere, but I haven't located it yet, which is probably why he didn't use it. He ran his own wire. The way this usually works is this section is rear lights, this section is front lights, horn, and the wire that goes down to your brake proportioning valve. And this section is engine controls and everything else, like the windshield wiper controls. So I know which ones are the windshield wiper controls because that plug is still hooked up. These are all wiper circuits here, these plugs. That doesn't leave us many wires to work with, and I actually don't have enough wires going through this bulkhead connector that are independent, that don't go through the fuse block, that I can run direct for gauges. So I guess we're going to be depending on some of those other wires that we have available, like the computer grommet section that I can splice into and run wires through in a factory looking fashion. So that was a pretty good summary. For now, I'm just going to pack a lot of it, clean this out a little bit, pack some dielectric grease on there, and put this bulkhead connector on. Enough talking. As usual, I talk too much. Let's actually do some work. So I've got the bulkhead connector hooked up, and I'm going to start sorting these things out. And I'm going to hook up what I can and what I know for sure, such as the rear light harness, things like that. I'm going to replace this fuse block and then mount this junction block up there, and I know what goes to the junction block, so I can mount those up. At least I think I know mainly what goes to the junction block. So I'm going to start getting the harness and that part set up, and that'll eliminate some wires for us, make this look a little bit cleaner and easier right off the bat. Alright, that's the first stage. It looks pretty messy. This wiring is going to be the wiring that comes across the top of the brake booster. There's usually a harness that goes across the firewall like that. This is going to go to the ignition switch wire, whichever one that is. I have to test the wires and figure it out. once I have the ignition switch in. And then of course all this is lights and alternator. And everything else we have to add other than glow plugs. This is the rear harness that goes to the rear of the vehicle. Obviously those, I know everything there because I don't even have anything wired there yet. So all of this is pretty much going to be, other than tying it up and putting it where it goes. This is just preliminary. I'm just kind of putting bundles together with electrical tape to just for layout. And I'm not going to put anything in wire loom or anything till we're getting close to actually knowing for certain where everything is going to be located and laid out in here. I'm going to do an electrical oil pressure gauge and an electrical temperature gauge. Temperature is right here. That's fine. I can just pull that out and plug in or adapt my new sender. Oil is a little bit more difficult. It's got this mechanical line that feeds back through there. I guess I'll just put my sensor right on the end of this. That's pretty much going to be it for now until I can get some gauges and more wires and switches mounted and things like that. Tachometer solution. So I believe I found a sender that will work with a variety of tachometers available today. This is actually primarily for speedometers, but it's a pulse sender. And it comes like this with a GM speedometer cable. But I just happen to have this little converter to a tang fitting that will slip on the end. And that should be about right for our tang drive, I think. We won't really know until we get everything together and our tach hooked up and the engine running, because obviously you can't tell if this thing's spinning from the outside unless you have an oscilloscope, which I don't have. It's hard to really check its function. So I am going to screw this on and we'll see. Now the main issue is location. Step into my office. So it's right back here, and the main problem is, well, it is right by the exhaust. Let me see if I can get this thing started in there. This thing aligned right to get it threaded on. Come on, get started. Anyway, I'm going to get this screwed on when I'm not holding the camera, and I think that'll work. We'll just have to figure out how to run the wires without burning them. I think we can run them right over to here and up and around. So I think that'll work. But again, we won't know until we have everything hooked up. Okay, it is on. So I don't know if that little plastic tang is long enough. And I don't know if the exhaust is going to cook our sender. And I don't know if the wiring is going to get cooked. I just don't know. The way the tach works is it takes that pulse generated by the tachometer, and I think that's like 16 pulses per revolution or 8 pulses per revolution. I'm not sure which. But you set it on your tachometer. There's buttons that you can set up, and you set the pulses per revolution, and then it'll translate that into a tach signal. So again, we won't know how well this works until we get there. Okay, so we have to run this tach wire. Would have been a lot easier to... Oh, I guess it's down there. Alright, well, I can't see it. I can feel it. Let's see. Okay. I think I got that locked in. Alright, so I'll run it over here with the other wires through here, over and across, because that's where it's going to go through. All right, we got our tach wire going up and over. We have our voltage regulator. I really didn't want to mount it to the fender because I didn't want it anywhere where it could catch water, but this will do just fine. All right, we got that coming over to our battery tray. So we'll have one battery hookup. So one over here. My wire's running across through the channel there. All right, other than the wiper motor, this is it for wiring for this side. All right, we have our temperature sender in. And I guess I'm going to run the wires, I don't know, somewhere where they're not going to be hot. I don't know, we'll figure that out. Well, maybe we should run the wires up here and down into this channel. Maybe I'll do that, that'll be easier. I have to run a ground on this anyway, so just run it over here and tag it onto that ground, I guess. Okay, what's next? Oil sender. Oil pressure sensor is mounted. I don't want to hear anything in the comments about all these adapters. This is what I had in my box. I had to go off a size and back down again to go to the oil pressure sender, but it works. And I'm just holding it onto that bracket temporarily. It has some room to vibrate if it needs to, and well, it may be a weird way of doing it, but that's the way we're gonna do it. The only other option is to put it up there or somewhere else, and well, here it's accessible. If I put it in there, or I can't even fit it way down there, so it would have to like stick out the side down there by that oil tube, and well, it's just in danger of getting broken off and stuff if I do that, so we won't be doing that. This should work fine. And then we'll wire this in. This green wire is the sender wire. Not sure these are labeled, so it's going to go in one of these as a ground. And then this is the tack wire coming over, and the ground is going to continue over to go to there, and the ground from this is going to go up there too. Ground them all in the same place. And we got our tack wires and our oil pressure sender wire and our temp sender wire all going through this block. So I think I'm going to run the temp wire over here and around and over into this harness and then over there, so we won't have any wires like, you know, in the way over here, because there's going to be a big air cleaner taking up this space, and I still have to hook up all the air lines and everything there, and there's also going to be the coolant lines coming through here, so there's already going to be enough stuff without adding more confusion to that. I want things to be accessible and easily maintainable. One of my primary things when I'm building a project is they have to be easy to maintain. I'll keep going with that, and then I'll give you an update when I have something. All right, we got the oil pressure sender wired in. We got a little bit of order to the chaos back there, and we have the temp sender wired in here. So I need air and vacuum senders, which I have here. I'm using all electric. Again, I just want wires going through the firewall. I don't want any other lines of any sort. It makes things easier. Not just for future maintenance, but for, you know, safety, not having oil and air and vacuum and everything going into your cabin. So we've got air and vacuum here. We're going to install them. I ran a line up and over. I haven't finished that up yet because I'm going to wire loom this stuff, but at least I'm planning to, but I don't have all the wires run yet. So have it to our vacuum port over here, and this goes to the inside vacuum for the cabin HVAC. And so we just have to tag in our wiring. This gets power and ground, and then of course the signal out. So we'll tag that in, run the ground over there where we've been running them. I guess this wire is blue. I'll tie into the blue one in the computer harness over there. And I guess we'll use the black one for air, and that'll be pretty much all our wires except for that bundled brown ones. So used that efficiently. All right, let's tie this in. Okay, this is what we're doing for now. And we have our air pressure sender on here. So here's where I installed it. I'm not going to finish cleaning up this wiring and putting wire loom on until I know we're done. When you're doing a highly customized project from the start like this, I mean, so many unknowns. So I know if I wire loom it, I'm going to regret it because I'll have to go back and do some things. So I'm not going to worry about that for now. So let's see what's next. All right, so these are the wires coming in through that firewall connector that we hooked the sensors into. So I'm going to extend them up into the harness and across here to the cluster. I also have to break out these plugs I have to pull out ignition power, lights, things like that. So we'll get these wires set up and ready to put the gauge cluster in. Okay, I think I got all of the main wires run and pinned out, which is to say I know which wire is which from the original instrument cluster and then my new wires. We have to hook up our lights and wipers. Have to put our ignition switch up in there. That should be fun since I put the column up in, right? Okay, this should work sufficiently well. Gonna touch up that paint, and then we just need 2 more wires for fuel and air gauges, and then I think we can start. Oh no, we gotta do the ignition switch. Okay, new ignition switch because the old one was bad. We're gonna mount that up in there. I need to go get the rod that fits in there and the column piece. It's easier to put that all together as one, so go grab that and we'll slap that together. So I slid this down. I'm gonna put the, get up out of the way there. Get the ignition switch up over that rod. I need 2 hands. I gotta hold the rod down and then slide the switch down over the pin, and I'll get the keys and test it out, and of course lock it down with the screws. Okay, got the ignition in. As you can see, it is up all the way out. Okay, now I can put this back together. I can run these wires down the column, and don't forget to put in your wire chute there. Now we can get these kind of tucked up. It was a lot easier if you put the column together as one piece, but you know, I didn't because, well, I didn't, so let's keep cruising along with this. There's going to be 2 harnesses. There's going to be one harness for the 2 main gauges and then one harness for the little gauges so that you can pull the bezel separately from the inner cluster. If I made them all one plug, it would make it difficult. You'll see as I go through here. So I need to separate out which ones of these are going to go to which cluster, and then each one is going to need a power and ground. So things like the tach signal and turn signals are going to go to the bezel, and the senders are all except the tach. Then the speedometer also needs the GPS sender, and I don't know where I'm going to put that yet. I may like put it right up in the center of the windshield. Let's get that together. Got the wiper switch plugged in, and I need to put the light switch in. I didn't buy a new light switch. I'm hoping this thing works. I don't remember if it does or not, and I don't know if I tested it, but it's easy enough to replace if it doesn't. So we're going to put that in, and that will be, I think, almost all of these switches. We have the turn signal switch in, we just don't have the lever. I think other than this, and then the wipers in there, I think we will be pretty close to putting a battery in this and testing. I hope. But well, at long last, it is time to hook up some power to this thing and see what we did wrong. So we're going to slam these batteries in, and maybe they'll have enough juice to start this thing. Fortunately, we've got 2 of them, so we'll have about 1,000-ish amps. So let's put these things in and I don't know, do a fire test and see if this rig burns to the ground, you know, as soon as I plug the power to it. Batteries are in place. Got the positive cable on. Now, if I haven't mentioned it before, these batteries, the way he had them wired, is in parallel, which means you get the same voltage, but the amperage adds up. If you hook them in series, like you go negative to positive on the batteries, you go through one battery into the other battery into the engine, then you get double the voltage, but you only get the base amperage. So that's the way he had them, and I got two of the exact same batteries, because when you hook them together like this, they're hooked together all the time, and if you have one battery that's better than the other, it'll just, you know, drain the other battery, or one battery that's weaker, it'll drain the whatever, you know what I'm saying. It kills one battery. Even this isn't the best way to do it. Best is to have a cutoff switch when they're sitting for at least one battery, so you can disconnect the batteries. Anyway, all that aside, I think we're ready for a smoke test. All right, here goes nothing. I don't see any sparks or anything. I don't see anything burning to the ground. Okay, well, let's just leave that hooked up just lightly there, so in a pinch we can rush over and disconnect it. Well, let's see if we have anything at all. Whoa, whoa. We've got everything. You can see the one blinker is on there. Okay, the problem is I didn't see any of this come on. Nothing powered up. Whoa. Yeah, we got nothing there. I'll turn the ignition on. Yeah, I don't have any power. Okay. Could be we blew a fusible link. I gotta check if I have power up to that junction block up there. So this circuit breaker up here draws its feed power from that junction block, which I get power on. So I get power to the feed side, but I don't get any power to the output side of the circuit breaker. Just a few millivolts. So I think that's problem number one. I'm going to basically bypass this circuit breaker. Okay, still getting no dome light. I probably wired that wrong. No, not getting any power to this unit. Still not much power to anything. Check all our fuses and everything before we go too much further, and verify the fuse block itself. Alright, so I did find one blown fuse. It is this one all the way up at the top, which I don't remember what that one is. I should probably check. It appears to be a, from what I can tell, a 15 amp. Or is it? You probably can't see it, but I can see it. Let me see if I have a 15 amp bus fuse. I probably do. Now, of all my bus fuses, I don't know if you've ever seen my bus fuse collection, but, well, it's pretty eclectic. I have about every type of bus fuse known to man. I found a slow blow 15. I probably use the 15s a lot. That's why I don't have any. Anyway, I'm going to try this. We're going to stick this in. What could go wrong using a fuse that's too big, you know? Just prepare myself for that burning smell again. Alright, what do we have? Ignition on. Oh! Okay, it works on. Just doesn't work on high because of that circuit breaker. Okay, got that bypassed. Okay, it does indeed bypass that. Yeah, still nothing on the gauges. Okay, so I have 12 volts with the ignition on at the right points. What I don't have is a ground. Let's tear this down a little bit. I gotta pull both clusters out again, and let's take a look. Okay, I think I got the grounds resolved. I had run the gauge cluster grounds through the original ground that was supposed to be coming to the gauge cluster, but now I just ran it direct to the ground terminal over there. So now we have some gauges. Okay, so we got our electrical hookup to the gauges. I am doing the gauges in a separate video So that has already been released or will be released. I don't know which. Depends on the order that these things come out and my editing schedule. So I do all this stuff myself. I apologize. Could be completely out of order. Whatever the order is, I don't know. But gauges are in, and we have functionality, all except for the vacuum gauge, which I have determined apparently is a bad gauge. So we'll figure that out later. But we've got an hour meter in our tach. And we've got obviously an odometer and all of our other gauges. We've got 6 functions. We need a light switch, I think, before we can test any of those lights. I'm waiting for that. I tried to use this one, but it doesn't, the latch to latch this in doesn't seem to want to work. I'll play with it. If I get it to work, I'll put it in for testing purposes. So the cigarette lighter, I get 9 volts. I'm not sure why I'm getting 9 volts. I feel like there's a load on that circuit for some reason. I don't know. But we are getting power out of the cigarette lighter, so that's good. I have to test the wipers and put in our wiper harness. So I needed a wiper harness. This is using the newer wiper motor that doesn't have the built-in washer because they're cheaper and easier to get a hold of. That's just my personal preference, and that's what we're doing. It's easy to convert over to the new motor because everything is pretty much the same except for the wiring, but then you need the harness. So I couldn't find one anywhere, and these are Delphi Packard plugs that they don't even make the plastic parts anymore, and everything is out of stock. Unless you can find somebody who makes and sells wiring harnesses and still has some in stock, you won't be able to find some. But I can't get any on the internet that anybody will sell me. So this is PacCon 2 is like their little trademarked thing. So this is a PacCon 2 35 plug, and then the other one, I don't remember the Delphi connector number for this, but anyway, you can't get them. So I looked all over and I finally found this one. This is the only one I could find, like, in the entire United States, from New Boys Square Body Rescue. So I'm calling these guys out because they did a really good job, shipped it to me right away. They're very polite and fast in their response, and they know exactly what they're doing. So they have a lot of square body stuff on their website, used, and maybe they sell new stuff too, I'm not sure, but look them up if you're looking for square body parts, because they know what they're doing. And they didn't charge me an arm and a leg for this either, because this was the only one in the United States, and they could have charged me like $200, and I probably would have bought it because I needed it, because I wanted to do this right. And of course, junkyards near me don't have anything I need, especially old trucks like this. So these guys, New Boys with a Z, Square Body Rescue, were the only ones that had it. So yeah, gotta give a call out to these guys because they were fantastic. I need to put this in, and I'm not sure on the pinout of this actual wiper control, but I can figure it out now that I have power, because I can figure out what it's sending power to, or ground. I think it uses a ground circuit to control that. So I'm going to put my meter up there and figure out how to wire this thing, basically. Okay, so this blue should be the washer activation, and the switch just grounds circuits. It gets power all the time through this wire, yellow with a black stripe, or black with a yellow stripe if you look at the wiring diagram. Anyway, so I've got that hooked up in the washer circuit, so I'm getting continuity when I do that. So that's the washer circuit. So that means that the other ones, this plug is all wiper motor. That's fine, we can figure that out. This one was power for the washer pump, 12 volts plus, and this was ground for the washer pump. So this would be your other plug. Now it's different on here. This is your park circuit, which is kind of the same. The washer was driven off of a switch on the other one. Let's see, power, so the white should be 12 volt. So this one should be 12 volt according to what I looked up, and then this one should be the low speed ground, and this one should be the high speed ground. I don't know, we can figure it out and test it. Let's see. Alright, so we'll pretend that's the wiper arm. It's parking a little weird. Yeah, see, it's parking at about halfway. Let me see this here. How do we get this out? I can't remember. There we go. The switch works. I know the switch works. See this raised section? This is when the switch is away from its thing. It's running after it's supposed to. If you look in there, that's where the contact point is, but that's where the open point is. Weird. The wheel rotates. Do I have that in backwards or something? I suppose it's possible. Can you get it in backwards? I don't think you can because of the shape of this. It has this curve cut out, so you can only get it in one way. I think I remember why this one was in the rebuilt pile now. Well, that's fine. That's why I did put this newer style motor on it, so that it would be easy to find a replacement if need be, and, well, apparently needs be. Anyway, this will give us enough to wire it up. We just have to get a working motor then. So now that I know what we need to do, it should be good enough to wire it up. So this gets ground all the time. And then these three come from the switch, which I should have. I have power there, and I have the two. I just have to figure out which is low and which is, well, I think I have them. No, I don't know which circuit is low and high. I have to look that up. Okay, so with the wires just kind of shoved in there, and that one grounded, I think we've got it. Ignition is on. So there's low. There's high. You can just barely hear a speed increase. It's normal with these square body wipers. And off. And it does go through a full cycle before you shut it off. So put that in there. So I think that is the correct wiring configuration. So I just need this to be a ground. That's fine. And actually those work pretty good in there. I can just tape them up. Probably not. I'll do them the right way. Okay, we've got wiper harness in. Just got the ground there. And these we can easily extend with spade connectors if and when we put this pump in. But we know both of those wires work, so that's all we need for wiring. Okay, first time trying to start this thing with the key. Here goes nothing. So the first thing that happened was, I think I fried the start position of the ignition switch, and I think this is why the old one was fried. For whatever reason, this starter on the start side is drawing too much power. I mean, it shouldn't draw that much to activate the solenoid and close the circuit, but for whatever reason it is. I think I fried my switch again. That's probably why he had put in a separate start button, which at this point I may do because I don't have to change the wiring much. I have access to the start circuit right here, and this is basically right into this. One of these wires goes right to the ignition switch, and the other wire goes right down to the starter. So all I have to do is plug into the starter side of that and then apply power to my other switch, which I know it's drawing more than 20 amps because it blew a 20 amp fuse when I tried to run this switch off of the ignition. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do there. In all of my adventures with this thing and getting it running, the starter was finicky, but I never pulled it. I don't really want to because it weighs probably like 80 pounds. All right, we have to pull this starter out, unfortunately, and either fix or replace it. So I have a feeling there's corroded contacts and everything in there, but to even look at it, I have to take it off. So I probably won't show that in detail because it's going to be just boring pulling parts and watching me suffer. Although, you know, watching me suffer is probably a good pastime, but anyway, I'm going to try to do this as quick and easy as possible, so we're just going to get right to it. Alright, well, I got this beast of a starter out, barely. You don't have to pull the exhaust to do it, but you do have to worm it out of there. Nip and denso, which means this is probably the original unit. My guess is it's so corroded. Anywho, goodness, that is corroded. So supposedly this gear reduction starter is a direct replacement for this one. I couldn't find this one anywhere, like the real just direct drive, no gear reduction in there. This one you can see the motors up here because there's another gear set in here that it runs through to get either extra power or speed. I'm not sure which. And it looks like the bolt pattern's the same, and looks like the position of the gears here before they fly out are the same. Yeah, it looks like the gear diameter's the same and all that. This doesn't have the extra bearing support out here for the end of the gear, which I don't like. This one actually has extra bearing support out here, which is very handy for longevity. I don't know. These gear reduction starters don't tend to last very long, especially if you abuse them even once, then you're done. Well, I guess we got nothing to lose by putting it on. Flywheel looks pretty good. That is a beefy flywheel. I mean, the ring gear is like an inch deep. I'm gonna reach in there and clean that stuff out of the bell housing there, and well, then I guess I'm gonna drop that starter in. Okay, we have new starter in. Much more room around it because, you know, compact gear reduction. So I'll have to see if it starts the engine, but yeah, it should be fine. I don't know. This is the same starter they recommend for a wide range of engines, and this is one of the bigger ones. So yeah, you know, that never works out in my favor. All right, let's try and start this thing with the new starter. Little glow plugs. That's all it took. I don't know what that means, off. Oops. Doesn't like to idle when she's cold, that's all. Well, I gotta say, after sitting all that time, it started right up. She is alive! Unfortunately, I think the oil pressure is off the charts. I don't know what that means exactly, but I know it works because I was getting oil pressure during cranking. We got 14 psi. 14 psi. Back's not working. Yeah, I don't know what that means for the tachometer. That muffler actually quiets it a good bit. Oh, there we got a tach. Not sure why it's not responsive. 15 psi of air, and I think the system's off. Yeah, it's off. Let's close that valve. See if we get more air pressure. And now she's ticking up. 22, 23. Exhaust is a little weebly wobbly. I think we're gonna have to add another support in here somehow. I don't know how, but maybe up here. I don't know. 47. Yeah, that pedal doesn't want to return. We're gonna have to put a spring on some kind on that. Spring the throttle a little bit more. 83, 82. Yeah. I don't know. If that can't handle the oil pressure that puts out, we're gonna have a problem. I guess it's not rated for that high of an oil pressure. Our hours are working. Okay, I got the vacuum gauge working. That was, their wiring diagram has 2 wires reversed, so if I turn the lights off it won't work. But the lights work on the gauges. As you can see, that'll turn that gauge off, but testing the lights right now. I gotta fix that one over there. I don't know what's going on with that socket or something. The bulb's good, but we have high and low beams. So, yeah. Also, what I note, I didn't know if I noted it there, but vacuum pump works good. We're getting about 20 inches of mercury that this vacuum pump puts out, which is more than enough to operate that HVAC system. And when I put that HVAC system in, I couldn't get it to switch to defrost with my hand vacuum pump. I guess it just wasn't enough, but with this, it actually switches now with this full vacuum hooked up, so that's good. You know, I just been waiting and waiting to drive this thing, and we are so close to taking this thing for a drive, short of tires and, you know, insides and not much else. Just a few finishing up some things, lights and little things like that. I'll tell you what, I can taste it. It's going to be like Christmas morning when I get in this thing to take it for a test drive, I'll tell you what. Alright, I have resolved the dome light issue. I'm going to test it here. As you can see, that works. And this courtesy light down here is also connected to it. The wiring there, that was my fault. I wired it backwards because I wasn't thinking. I didn't have anything else in when I wired that dome light. That was the first thing I did. And I forgot that the way that system works is it's a switched ground. It always has power, but the ground is switched. Same for the cargo light. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the way I wired it. I don't know how it's normally wired, but so they share power and the grounds are switched. And the cigarette lighter wire, I was getting low voltage on that. I wired that into the courtesy light circuit because it doesn't matter where it takes power from. And I'm getting full 12 volts now. I think there's a short in that circuit somewhere. It's not even enough to power a bulb because it's either drawing too much amperage or... Anyway, there's something going on with that. I'm not going to use that wire. So I think we have most of these things resolved. There's a few little things to go yet. And I'm waiting to hear back from the manufacturer on this oil pressure off problems. So in case you were wondering, you probably weren't, the weak part of the square body start system apparently is the ignition switch. You can see this contact, there's supposed to be a couple more in here, you know, like this. And if you don't know how this switch works, and this flips upside down and slides back and forth in there, you can see this is the actual start contact. Sorry, it's supposed to go this way against the spring. So when you push it against the spring to start it, this is flipped upside down, and this makes contact between these two bars You can see, well, it's burnt and charred. So that is what happens. I could fix this, but switches are so cheap, it's not even hardly worth it. But by the time I put it back together, I realize it doesn't work, then take it apart, clean it up again, and put it back together. It's probably not worth it. But I guess that's what happens when you run too much amperage through your start switch. That was the old starter that fried that. I just wanted to do a quick autopsy and see what happened. New turn signal switch. Should have started with new switch gear right out of the gate, but these older switches are actually built a little better. I wanted to try to preserve that. I guess it's not working. Turn on our power here. We have turn signal. Other way, we have turn signal. Turn it off. And we have, well, the 4-way stick. That's fine. I don't know. Could be the flasher. I don't care. More important, we have turn signals at the moment. Okay. Excellent. Test the other one. I don't know if you can see them in this bright light, but just take my word for it. They're working. Excellent. Okay, we have turn signals. Anyway, that's the base wiring. This video is already too long, getting long and boring. I know wiring is incredibly boring, but this is a very non-standard truck with the diesel engine and everything, and I wanted everyone to see how I integrated the diesel into this, because the original systems were not up to snuff, and most of them were mechanical parts anyway that I wasn't going to reuse. So I wanted to show all that. We still need to fix the alternator and get that working. We need a radio, and we need to fix the tachometer issues. But all the base stuff is in place. We can build on that in another video. We'll resolve everything and get the entire system up to par and working. So that's it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Feel free to like, subscribe. I always appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.